Hey, I'm Cameron Cheats with Queerty. Thanks for the time today, guys.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
To start, I really wanted to ask, I'm so curious to hear for each of you how familiar you were, if at all, with this Marines boot camp process. Was it a shock just how grueling and intense this whole thing could be?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't have a whole lot of awareness of what boot camp actually entailed going into it. The recruits, that's sort of the point of the story, is they are thrown into this thing sort of head first. I sort of took that approach as far as, also we had like no time. When I booked the job, they literally were like, we need to fly you to New Orleans tomorrow to like start doing everything. But we were very lucky to have military advisors on set with us literally every single day. Most of them served at the time that the show's actually based, and obviously the show's inspired by Greg Cope White's memoir, The Pink Marine, and he was there and he's a writer on the show, so we had a lot of resources if we needed them. And of course, we're also sort of portraying what actually happens in boot camp on screen. So we were sort of experiencing a lot of these things for the first time at the same time that the characters were.
Yeah, I was going to say, getting thrown right into it seems to probably help in some respect, from a character perspective, getting into that mental state.
I wanted to train with the recruits because I wanted to know what I was drilling. Essentially, I wanted to also learn. So although I didn't film a lot of the assault course and the swimming week, I wanted to learn it so that I could do it justice. But I remember there was one moment where we were sort of learning the Stairway to Heaven, which is like a huge structure that you have to climb all the way over. And Miles told us while we were there that he's like extremely afraid of heights. And so, that was like a special day because we were all like stood at the bottom, like cheering you on and just watching him like overcome his fear was
very much sort of mirrored the show, that moment, because I'm like, my fear of heights, it's like pretty extreme. It's like not fun. I'm not like, I don't want to ride it, and then I get on the roller coaster. I'm like, I will not do it.
You right.
So when I
you okay on this high chair?
I'm nervous right now because of this chair. When that day came, I was genuinely shocked with myself that I was able to do it, and it was very sweet to have everyone down there cheering me on, and it felt like the show. I'm like, it feels like I'm actually achieving something and that everyone's applauding for me. But honestly, there are moments of the show that you wouldn't think would have been the hardest. Like the obstacle course was like honestly one of the more fun days. There's a scene in the first episode where Max has us holding our rifles at a 90-degree angle. He has this lovely monologue, but we filmed that monologue, I want to say, almost all day because it's so long and there's so many shots and so many people to cover. So we're just sort of holding these guns in front of ourselves all day. And I remember that being like sort of the most
right.
challenging day for me, weirdly.
What I loved as well was that I come in at the end of episode 1 and these guys have never seen me do anything before apart from mess around in boot camp and just sort of like make jokes. So then I think it was like a shock when they saw me like in Sullivan mode. They're like, oh, Max is pretty horrible.
Yeah, I would say Max and Angus, who plays Hicks in the show, are sort of the least like their characters in real life. Like, it's just such a difference. It's very strange too, because when I watched the show back, there's so much stuff that Max was in that we weren't a part of. And watching it, I was just so blown away by how good he does in the show, genuinely, because we weren't there for it, and he's so different from his character. I'm like, wow, I guess this is acting. I need to do some research.
Oh my God, shut up.
It's true.
I wanted to ask you both about kind of finding your way into these characters. Miles, as you mentioned, obviously Cameron's story, great name, by the way. Cameron's story is drawn from Greg Cope White's memoir, The Pink Marines. Greg was on set and you got to speak a lot with him. Tell me a little bit about finding your own way into Cameron and figuring out who this character was and what he meant to you.
This is sort of a boring and embarrassing answer, but Cameron is so similar to me and my life experience. There wasn't much of a stretch. I could very easily pull from my real experience. I think that his story sort of resonates with a lot of us. And I do think it's also universal, just this feeling of hiding something and wanting to find belonging and find community. But for me with Cameron, there's just so many overlaps. that I was able to pull a lot of stuff from my real life. Obviously, the circumstances and situations are completely different. It wasn't too difficult to pinpoint like, yeah, I can really connect with how this feels, especially as a gay person. There are definitely moments in the show that were daunting, that I was nervous about filming. Ironically, the thing I was most scared of was the Stairway to Heaven. I would swear someone along the way was like, "Oh, we're building like a miniature one. We're gonna do angles. Like you'll be like 5 feet off the ground," and then that didn't happen.
Well, and then Max, I mean, can you talk about Sullivan? I know that there's his own character. He gets this lovely spotlight later on. I mean, throughout, but a specific episode where we get to learn much more about his backstory. In what ways did his story resonate with you?
I think originally auditioning for the role, I didn't necessarily relate with Sullivan because I only got given this one scene, the scene at the end of episode 1, which is just this big scary drill instructor. And I think through Hollywood, you watch portrayals of drill instructors being sort of a lot older, usually like graying at the hair, jacked, like sort of like veterans. And I was nervous that I wouldn't be able to do it justice. And then the more and more scripts that got fed to me, the more I learned about Sullivan's character. I realized, although I'm not the same sort of on the surface, I feel like there's a lot of similarities. Sullivan is kind of a closed book. He's such an amazing character to play because you think he's one thing, you know, when he's so horrible to Cameron, when he's literally picking on him. Throughout the series, you get to learn why he is the way he is, what sort of triggered him to become this angry. And I sort of loved, as an actor, being given this sort of dream role where I could, one, play a queer character, but two, play such a well-rounded, interesting, sort of fucked up character that was such a joy to play, but also a really harrowing, sad part to play as well.
I feel like pretty early on, Cameron's like, I'm worried that Sullivan's gonna clock him, so to speak. Is there like a moment where he like clocks him? Is there a tell?
I think the whole reason why he becomes a drill instructor is essentially to run away from his life, to get away from this thing that's now chasing him. This is his moment to sort of start a new life almost, and use drilling as sort of an outlet to just lock back into the Marines. And I think his first introduction to his new platoon, he sees Cameron straight away, and it brings him back to the thing he's running away from, which is why I feel so strongly about, one, not liking him, and two, trying to get him to quit. Don't go through what I've gone through. And I love the fact that he sees something in Cameron sort of a few episodes in that sort of changes his mind. He sees this resilience and he's a lot stronger than he assumed. And I sort of love this like yo-yo of like, am I teaching Cameron or is Cameron teaching me stuff about myself? So I like that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, Miles, can you talk a little bit about, within your performance of him, do you think there is a moment where he really starts to, a turning point where he really starts to see Sullivan for who he is?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that when Cameron initially sees Sullivan, I think he looks up to him in a way and sees him as this sort of figure that is confident and capable and respected. And I think that he desires that. I don't think that he has really had that at home. And I think it's something that he wants. And then slowly over the show, you know, Sullivan sort of starts to crumble because he's having his own battle. And I think that Cameron starts to see that, and as the series goes along, he starts to realize that they have more in common than he might have thought. And, you know, by the end, I think he realizes that this person that he idolized and looked up to is actually an example of what can happen if he decides to hide this part of himself, hiding who he is. And it's like, it becomes this conundrum at the end of like, what is the cost of growth and what is the cost of changing and self-discovery? Because he's gained all these things, but at what cost? You know, he sees what that could be in Sullivan. And I think the show sort of leaves him with that question of like, how am I going to move forward? Because I don't want to end up like Sullivan, but I also don't want to go back to how my life was before. And I think it's this really cool, interesting story that we don't really see very often amongst two gay characters. You know, you're expecting some sort of romance or forbidden love or longing, and it's like, it's really not about that. It's a lot deeper than that, and I think it will resonate with people, hopefully.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm watching this also thinking about this. The stakes are so different, but I'm watching this thinking about parallels between being queer in the military and navigating what it means to be an out actor in the entertainment industry, what it means to just be out in our public lives too, and how we sort of navigate that. So I'm curious if either of you felt like it was speaking to maybe what you were going through as you were grappling with whether or not you wanted to be publicly out in your careers.
It's definitely mirrored for me. I started acting when I was 10, so I've been doing this for a really long time, and the industry has actually dramatically changed. But growing up, it consumed me truly. Like the older I got, the more like clockably gay I was. Not in a bad way. I'm obsessed. I love it. But I never came out publicly. People are like, you came out at a young age. I'm like, no, everyone just saw my face and was like, gay actor, Miles Heizer. Like I never really chose that in a strange way. But I used to have conversations with my representation about what does that look like, and should I not come out or should I not play gay parts, because there's this fear of being sort of confined to that box. And not that long ago, there were also not very many queer roles, and they were often some sort of stereotype. So for me to be in this position, playing this character on such a huge streaming platform like this is like sort of mind-blowing. It's such an incredible like leap forward, I think, for just representation and for myself, and to have been a part of this is like just such an honor for me. And I hope that we continue to make progress.
Growing up, I always wanted to be an actor, and I sort of envisioned what the future would look like for me. And, you imagine, accepting an award, or you sort of fantasize when you're a kid about what it means to be an actor. And I never imagined myself as an out gay actor. That's totally not where I saw myself, but I'm so glad that the journey has brought me to where this is now. Growing up, media, helped me a lot in terms of discovering maybe who I was. And it's quite nice, although the show doesn't have an agenda, it's not out there to be political. It's out there to tell an incredible story. But I do think that, people may watch it that need to watch it.
I feel like this is a complete 180 from what we were just talking about, but I'm so curious for either of you. I mean, I know this has been years in the making. Are there any elements of this series that you've really kept with you? Whether it's like, is anyone keeping up the military level training regimen? Are there parts of the series that you've kept with you?
There was this one podcast that talked about Marines that go through boot camp, and then afterwards this sort of like depression almost that you can go through, like, I don't know, like making your bed or doing all this stuff. It sort of doesn't fit with normal life. Some of them were saying that they didn't necessarily keep the same friends afterwards because it didn't fit. So it's sort of that like going through the boot camp and the military thing. I think for a while I'd go away and sort of miss it a lot, miss being so busy and active and being with sort of these brothers that I'd shared so much time with over 2 years. That sort of like something's missing. Now I'm glad that I never see them. But
Right.
Right.
I will say, when we finished shooting, I kept my hair like borderline bald, like super, super buzzed, just because it was so freeing to not have to think about my hair and to not stress about, like, it takes 5 seconds to wash it. Now, obviously, it's coming back a bit. I do find myself doing random, especially about face, which is like one of the movements.
What, just in the mirror?
I just do, no, just like around the house or when I'm turning somewhere. It's always at home alone. I'll find myself just sort of doing them. There's something like very fluid about it that's like kind of satisfying.
I keep calling people sir and ma'am. I keep doing that.
Just polite.
I'll get out the Uber and I'll say, like, thank you, sir, in my own accent. People will think,
Right.
It feels a bit like Oliver.
Yeah.
Miles, it's so funny you mentioned the hair, because that was my first thought. Once we see everyone with their heads getting shaved, I was like, I've never seen my head shaved or bald. Like, I would have been panicked that my head shaped weird.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah. Literally, I didn't know what was under there, and I was assuming it was absolutely hideous. So,
and it was.
There was this huge buildup. I mean, part of me was like excited about it because it felt like this turning point in the show. Like, all right, we're here, we're doing it. But yeah, I think we all were pretty nervous about what we would look like. And then once it came off, I was like, you know what? It looks kind of nice. I'm kind of into it. And yeah, it was like such a relief to not have to think about your hair anymore.
Yeah, you pull it off well. You really do, if I'm allowed to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you both for the time today. Congratulations on the series. Can't wait for everyone to see it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.